Pax vobiscum. Okay, I recorded all of this already, and I'm having to redo it right now because I had to mix up a technological issue, and so everything was absolutely deleted. I don't even have the video, nothing. Tried to recover it. Anyways, so I'm redoing all of this because there was a really good comment section that I wanted to talk about because it was very thought-provoking, but I wanted to share how fear-driven behavior easily cascades out and how it influences things. And an example of that, actually, because my girlfriend, I filmed the video originally elsewhere in the house or on the property, and she was like, don't film around the house because you're going to show everyone how to, like, rob my house or whatever. And I told her, you just demonstrated one of the principles that I talked about in my video, where, like, your first thought was some, like, worst case scenario. And she just laughed at me, and she was like, fine, you can film wherever you want. But I decided to come outside and be by the plumerias, because they're very nice. They're very nice. But it's also ironic, but even the screenshot on the screen, the final screenshot that I included for the video, I was at least trying to save that, because that window was still open. And what was ironic, because what was on the screen was, records are often unaware they're being created until hindsight makes a moment be perceived with clarity. That's part of the phrase, but then only highlighted is records are being created with clarity. And everything gets wiped away. Oh, it was great. It was really funny. That's some good ironic humor there. So I wanted to talk about, though, because there was a really great dialogue and comment section on Rising Zion channel about women, or the title was, "The LDS Church Just Asked About Girl Bishops. Huge Priesthood Data Erupts." And so I found, going through that comment section, there were some behaviors that were admirable and some behaviors that were just, like, completely shocking to perceive. And so it was a beautiful record, essentially, of capturing the moment where everyone's seeing they're exposing their thoughts, feelings, beliefs, what's going on with them, what they're concerned about, regarding a potential ponderance of change, of opportunity within the LDS faith. And so I wanted to give an example. So if you want to go scroll through that comment section, it's beautiful. You can just see all these different types of behaviors that are coming about. And one of them that I really liked and I wanted to highlight, because it relates very easily to how assumption can overtake meaning or implication on things, and what's necessarily written doesn't actually correlate to the message being conveyed. Not even the literal message being conveyed, but also on different levels. So going with that, this was a comment that I came across, and I had a great dialogue, and I thought it would be a great learning opportunity to share it with other people. So this person says, "I'm trying to play this out in my head. All I can see," oh, pardon me, this, I believe I said that. This is a talk about something regarding bishops being, the position of bishop being opened to more people. And so this is what the guy says: "I'm trying to play this out in my head. All I can see is absolute disaster. I'm not saying women aren't up for the task, but I guarantee the imbalance, the politics, the entire meaning of purpose, responsibilities, the debate about biology would be an absolute chaos. In 2026, men are already under attack and stepping back from societal responsibilities. If this happened, I guarantee you would see men pull back at the church. Not because their feelings are hurt or they're mad about losing power. They would simply ask, why am I needed? Why do I need to show up? Men run on purpose. Take it away and they will step back." And that's really important here, because there's a lot of assumption going on. He's assuming, when he says towards the end there, he's assuming that something's being taken away, and that's the recurring theme there. And it's nothing that I would argue is anything abnormal. Like, you would expect this type of response because it's a very jarring change to the cultural norms and behaviors. And history shows so many different examples of when someone challenges the norms at the time, there's usually a high amount of resistance across the different people, the masses or whatnot, for accepting that change. It happened with, like, Galileo Galilei, Giorgio, or Bruno Giordano, or something like that. Happened with Jesus, right? There's so many different times. Einstein, when you have these moments where there's a lot of resistance to when opportunity or different change arrives. And so, where was I at? So when I read this, though, I don't see it as a man versus woman type thing, because it's about, the best way I could describe it in layman's terms is, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Yes, but first the horse has to have the opportunity to be led to water. And the opportunity to be led to water hasn't occurred yet for certain aspects of humans. And this is an example of how ponderance the masses are responding to when all horses are going to be allowed to potentially drink water. You get what I'm saying? Okay. You can see that he's jumped to worst case scenario. And the way you can see this, and again, normal human behavior. I said, as an example, when parents don't hear from their kids for maybe a couple hours past check-in, or they're past their curfew. You try calling their phone, the phone's dead, like they're not answering, and you start to panic. At some point in your thought process, the thought is going to cross the parent's mind that something catastrophic happened to my child. The other things that could have potentially went wrong. The phone battery died. I've been traveling before and my phone battery dies. They had it on silent. Their soccer practice ran over, and their gym bag, their phone's in their bag. Their tutoring, and the tutoring session ran over. Whatever it is, right? Obviously, it's case dependent, but oftentimes we jump to worst case scenario, and this person's doing the exact same thing, and you can tell by their language, because he uses the words absolute disaster. Then he goes on to say absolute chaos, already under attack, stepping back. Those types of words show a perceived threat. Those are words that would make anyone be like, spidey sense, be like, high alert, danger, danger, right? And so you see that danger arises from the assumption that something is being lost. And so with that, though, I wanted to continue a dialogue with him. So I wanted to say something and just verify if he was playing on these assumptions that I assumed he was doing. And so one of the things I did when I responded is I said, if that's all it takes for a man to question his worth, then he will realize his testimony is made of sand and not stone. What I did with that, because I took his own words, I looked at the underlying message when he said in the second part, if this happened, as in women were allowed opportunity in the church, I guarantee you would see men pull back in the church. But then he goes on to say, like, you would automatically assume, oh, it's because their feelings are hurt. And he states that, not because their feelings are hurt or they're mad about losing power. They would simply ask, why am I needed? Why do I need to show up? Men run on purpose. Take it away and they will step back. So that to me is when an opportunity is taken away, or what is perceived as an opportunity being taken away, does the effort continue or does the effort stop? And he is arguing, if there is no opportunity, if we are taking away our opportunity, we're no longer going to participate. And I thought about that, and I was like, no one's taking away any opportunities, first off. Like, they're expanding them. But then second off, that would imply, what kind of testimony does that demonstrate to others? What does that type of behavior demonstrate if you're talking about your testimony? Would that be something that you would assume if someone had an opportunity, like for instance, on different types of perspectives and terms that correlate to that same underlying meaning? If someone failed a test, if someone didn't get the job promotion, got passed over at the job promotion, if someone got a speeding ticket, would they stop driving because they saw this like resistance to an opportunity, or the opportunity changed? Would you quit pursuing your college degree just because you failed one test or in remediation? Do you quit going to the gym because the number on the scale isn't moving? Like, do you give up? Like, what occurs there? What kind of carrot is still, or what kind of behavior is demonstrated normally with opportunity is that you either keep going forth, right? You keep putting forth effort and recognize that the thing still carries meaning and value, But if you walk away from it and forsake everything, then you're just showing that you no longer assign meaning and value to something. And that innately applies that certain humans would, who are upset about the potential of this change, are demonstrating that they're upset that the thing that they value the most or have great worth and value and meaning in, they feel like it gets diminished when women are allowed to have access to it. So, you know, like, I don't know if anyone's aware about what the behavior is demonstrating. But anyways, I said this in response. If that's all it takes for a man to question his worth, then he will realize his testimony is made of sand and not stone. I was again commenting on his assumptions about the generalizations that he was making. I'm like, okay, and I utilized the words he, the gender pronouns, but this applies to any human beings. If like taking away an opportunity is all that is required for someone to question their worth and their sense of purpose, then there's greater underlying issues occurring beyond just gender. Anyways, he says this: respectfully, I don't question my testimony at all. Although I was not talking about him, I generalized it to the gender level because that's the level I thought we were talking about. Turns out we were talking about a different level. Respectfully, I don't question my testimony at all. Also, I don't exactly think that's a fair statement when we've been taught that it's okay to have questions and it's okay to ask such questions while faithfully seeking answers. You can disagree with my statement, but I ask specifically as to why, instead of calling anyone who would have the very questions or doubts I highlight as weak in their beliefs. Notice how he filled in a lot of assumptions there. I never targeted him exactly, but he took my words, which is really good. I think that's a really great thing that he's demonstrating. He took my words and he applied them to himself, being like, how does this apply to me? And I do that all the time with my own words. When I write a comment to someone, I immediately take it and be like, how does this apply to me? What is this saying to me? What am I missing about myself? And I put myself under the microscope too, because that's how you grow. That's how you are aware of your own behaviors and whatnot. And so he filled in himself, and he revealed that he does not question his testimony at all. You can go into semantics of that, but we're not going to go into semantics of that. And then he says, you can disagree with my statement. There was never anything that disagreed with anything, but he brought in duality, which is, again, normal agreement. People like to categorize things, yes, no, good, bad, just keeps things plain and simple. My response doesn't necessarily fit into a box, but you can see which category he placed me in, and it would be arguably easy to say that he placed me into the category of hostile. But he asked at the end, though, I enjoyed this, because he's open to feedback, basically. He's open to being like, hey, help me understand what you're saying, kind of thing. Because he says, you can disagree with my statement, but I asked specifically as to why. And so I go into it. And then instead of calling anyone out would have been the very questions or blah, 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 that last sentence he says there, I basically ignore that and don't even respond to it because it's just correlated to, again, like feeding into that tit for tat, that emotionally driven behavior. So I respond back to him by quoting himself and just kind of condensing it to make it easier to perceive the words of how I was seeing it. I was responding to your assumptions listed in your comment. If this happened, I guarantee you would see men pull back. Not because their feelings are hurt or they're mad. Take it away and they will step back. I left out some words, of course, but the words you chose convey the assumption men only have meaning based on a label. Without the label, they would question why they're needed. And I quote him, why am I needed? Why do I need to show up? Following by a statement they would run on purpose. There's a typo. This implies a testimony of brittle foundation due to no longer perceiving relevance under the assumption an opportunity is no longer accessible. And it implies men would simply give up, which is a bit of a stretch into irrationality. And I gave examples previously when someone has an opportunity, when they hit a speed bump, a roadblock in something they value and passion and have meaning assigned to, do they just give up, throw in the towel, and walk away from it, or do they stay in it? So that's why I said the implication that he presented that men would simply give up, I think that's a bit irrational. However, no one stated extending opportunity correlated to removing it from another, but you made the assumption by stating, take it away and they will step back. No one is taking anything away. They're simply pondering extending who has access to it. And then I also go into the second part where I talk about his the fear-driven behavior, like words that clue me in that hey, he's what's it called? Jumping to worst case scenario kind of thing and doing fight or flight mode. But the big thing here that I'm trying to bring his awareness to is hey, can you see how you correlated two things that are in completely different categories here? Extending opportunity to someone does not mean that people are going to take it. And you can scroll through the comment section and see how many people wouldn't utilize it. Just because an opportunity is there does not mean people are gonna flock to it. And so I just don't understand where this behavior comes from, because if you even see in the male population, you don't have people flocking to want to be bishops, even though it's available to them. They understand and are aware of what it takes. No one's questioning that. They're just wondering about making the opportunity be extended to all humans that are members of the church. Anyways, it's just some of these behaviors. Again, when you recognize fear-driven behavior, it becomes very obvious if you start to recognize how it presents and does things. So I say this: the first portion of your comment implies extending opportunity would result in absolute chaos. This seems to be correlated to anxiety about stepping into an unknown situation, similar to the anxiousness a first-time parent would feel or a new, unfamiliar calling would create. It's normal human behavior to jump to worst-case scenario. However, the fundamental principle is a human is being considered for an opportunity and other humans are afraid of it. Hopefully, I've already discussed how that applies there, so we'll keep going. He says, yes, I absolutely called my shot. I also provided reasons as to why I make that claim. And I'm going to have the words on the screen, but I'm going to read out loud how I interpret this. Humans are driven by purpose and a reason for being. We're different. We have a deep intrinsic need to be useful. And let me clarify, this isn't about one calling. This now calls into question everything when it comes to the priesthood itself. But I would argue he's not only questioning just the priesthood, he's questioning other different narratives, right? Because in his head, the way I can describe it, and his questions go into it, and this is, again, something that I think is very healthy for him to be just openly expressing and having open dialogue about, because then it can help resolve that anxiety, but from even just thinking about the thought. So, people should be unafraid to express their concerns aloud and recognize that yes, sometimes the word selection could be better, but there's nothing wrong with, being transparent about your thoughts and feelings, because that's how people feel less anxious and whatnot. Anyways, down that rabbit hole. So he says, does that now mean women hold the Aaronic priesthood and the Melchizedek priesthood? Do women now give blessings, do baptism? And so he's listing things that he deems as high value, high sacredness in his head. Things that carry a lot of worth and meaning to him for whatever reasons. Oftentimes that could be because of a sense of identity, sense of authority, sense of empowerment, sense of inspiration, sense of purpose, those types of things. And so he's questioning whether they'll still hold the same value if other people are open to having that opportunity as well, to feel that value, and worth. But for him, he's viewing that as a loss. Do women now give blessings, do baptism? The office of bishop is a priesthood calling, so you can't have one without the other. So once you remove men from being needed, and again, no one is talking about removing men, but he is assuming that's what it means. If you open up this opportunity, it means men are being removed. It does not mean that. Those are two absolutely correlated different meanings. So once you remove men from being needed in a capacity that was solely their responsibility, yes, many men will question their purpose and everything else I previously mentioned, and yes, many would step back. Again, I already talked about the types of what that actually demonstrates about the value of something or how much they actually truly cared about it. Because, like, a good example is when people are retiring from jobs like the military or they're PCSing, oftentimes they kind of like zone out the last couple months and they check out. They don't do as good of a job on things. They don't really like, they hand it off in like okay condition when if they were still working there, they would try to keep it in excellent condition. And so it's like if something that you valued and took care of in excellent condition all of a sudden was enabled for other people to feel the same feeling, and now you no longer felt that that thing was as valuable as you once perceived it to be, like, what does that say about someone? Just, something to ponder and think about. And so I say this to him. Again, you make the assumption the opportunity is being taken away from someone when that is frankly not the case. It's being pondered to include others. I'm questioning why you keep confusing the concept as a loss when there is nothing to indicate because anything is being lost. Or, yeah. So, with that, again, I'm trying to prevent them because he kind of hints at like, hey, like, and yes, many would step back. And if you look through the comment section, there's a couple people that even said like, I would straight up leave the church if that happened. Having open dialogue about this and just clarifying, hey, like nothing's being cut off type thing would hopefully prevent someone from doing something as radical as like stepping away from the church, right? But heavenly parents work in mysterious ways, so perhaps that's part of the the spreading of seed. So I go on to say, because again, we're going to step a little bit more deeper into the LDS framework now, because previously I was basically overviewing it from like an observer looking in, being like, this is what's kind of potentially heading this towards. Let's try to see if we can steer it back on track without letting assumption just go run amok. But then I step more into the LDS lens and be like, hey, are you also aware that this comment section is basically serving as a record for an unfolding revelation that perhaps is correlated to Heavenly Mother? So I said this, based on meaning being conveyed through your chosen words, uniqueness, exclusivity, identity, or special purpose are being perceived as threatened. Could you possibly clarify what about your perspective is being called to question everything by the unfolding revelation regarding Heavenly Mother's presence in the eternal perspective of Heavenly Parent's eyes? Or has this situation yet to be perceived nor classified as revelation due to its uncomfortable nature of presentation? Again, I think I don't know what's going on is regarding openly discussing like the unfolding presence or of Heavenly Mother. But to me, like these types of conversations are serving as records and data for an unfolding to a larger event type thing. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, he says this. I think I've taken this as far as it can go. I don't see what else I supposed to clarify. I think I've explained the issues clearly, especially when it comes to how men operate. And again, I would say not how men operate, how humans operate. Humans innately want a need. They feel like they need to have purpose. Without a sense of purpose, they think back and look at their lives and think, what's the point? And that's when you get into concepts like nihilism and existential crisis, faith crisis, things like that. Where did I say that? Also, if I'm being quite honest, this whole debate about women becoming bishops is purely hypothetically, and isn't going to happen. And he says, I'm also not interested in Heavenly Mother as well. I wish you well. Basically he's saying that. I'm also not interested in expanding other this such SS, our Heavenly Mother. So he's basically saying I'm also not interested in talking about Heavenly Mother. But I love what he said about this part, and that's what I wanted to highlight. Is purely hypothetical, and isn't going to happen. And so with that, how many times in history, we can just categorize biblical history if we want to, where something that is said that's never going to happen happens. That's where the story of like David and Goliath come from. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Abraham and Isaac, Jonah. Moses was a stutterer. What else? Like, do we see a trend here? How where oftentimes the overlooked, the irrelevant, the dark horse comes out of nowhere that no one expects, and everyone's just like, how, like that? There's no way that's possible. He basically put this situation into the category as it's a purely hypothetical and isn't going to happen. If humanity had $1 for each time that actually was proven wrong, like, everyone would have a lot of money right now. They should really make that as a betting thing. Anyways, I said this to him closing up. Records often are unaware they're being created until hindsight makes the moment be perceived with clarity. Thank you for your contributions and extended dialogue. Because again, I think that serves as a beautiful purpose of demonstrating a lot of underlying behaviors that are going on. Sometimes they're shocking, but anyway, I'm just going to quit rambling. I can keep going. This is long enough. Fox Beast.